Hello everyone, welcome back to another one of my videos. In this video I thought I would do a Cubase top 10 tips, and these are all things that I've come across over the years of using Cubase. I first started out with Cubase 3 and then I moved to Cubase 5 and then I've continually moved up through to Cubase Pro 10. So that's about 15 years of using Cubase. So these are all my tips that I've come across over the years. Before we start though, if you're new here, click that subscribe button. And with that, let's get to the video. Okay, so my first tip in this video is use VCA Faders. So I've got this little song written out, and if I open up the mixer, I've mixed it. This is a terrible mix, by the way. I wouldn't actually mix like this. I've just done this for demonstration purposes. So say you've mixed your song, but one of the channels is clipping. So then you're going to have to go through every single other channel and turn down all of these faders just because that one is clipping. Well, you don't actually have to do that. If you just click on the first fader and then hold shift and then click on the last fader so it selects all the channels, then right click on the meter and go add VCA fader to selected channels. That will create a VCA fader, and basically this allows you just to turn down everything, so you can control all of these with this one fader. So that is going to lead into tip number 2 on my list, which is don't mix to 0 dB. So most people want to get the song as loud as possible when they're mixing, but you really don't need to. You can get the loudness in the mastering stage afterwards. And the benefit of not mixing to 0 dB is you probably won't clip tracks as much, and then you won't have to do any of this VCA fader stuff just to turn down one channel. If you mix to, say, I don't know, -6 dB or something like that, then you've always got a little bit of headroom in case you need it. Tip number 3 on my list is use group channels and effects channels as much as you can. So this is really if you have a low-end computer with not much CPU power. Instead of putting the same effect on everything, like say you have a load of guitar channels and you just want to copy the same reverb effect on them all, if you just add a effects channel, so right click anywhere on the mixer and click add effect channel, and then you select that effect. We'll just put a simple reverb effect on here. You can now send any of the channels directly to that effects channel. If you just go into the channel settings, you can then go to send, and you can send it to that effects channel that you've just created. And this gives you a little bar as well that you can tell it how much you want to send. So that's a way of saving CPU on low-end computers. Instead of loading up like 10 versions of the same effect, you're just loading up one. And the same thing goes for group channels as well. Instead of putting effects on all the individual channels, you can also put them on one group channel, and that works the same as an effects channel really. The difference with a group channel is the group fader also controls the volume for them all as well. Tip number 4 is you can drag MIDI and audio parts to duplicate them. And this is actually something that I've only recently discovered. So say you have a MIDI part or an audio part, it works for audio as well, and you just want to repeat that pattern over and over again. Instead of clicking it and then copy and pasting it, you have to select the channel and then you have to click where you want to paste it and stuff. You can just drag the middle of the MIDI part across and that'll duplicate it, and it also works for audio as well. So that is tip number 4 on my list. Tip number 5 is normalize audio tracks before you start working on them. And this, to be honest, isn't necessary, but it makes things a lot easier because you can see the sound wave a lot clearer. So I have a basic audio track here that isn't normalized. For an effect like normalization, you have to use direct offline processing because you can't if I open up the mixer now, you can't put normalization on as an effect on an audio channel. So what you do is you highlight the audio part, then you go up to the top, you click audio, direct offline processing, or you can press F7. And here you want to add it as a process. So we're going to click normalize. Let's click new version. And that will normalize this to, say we want it to 0 dB. So the highest point of our audio file is going to be 0 dB. And that, it doesn't actually affect the actual sound of the audio part. All it does is normalize the sound wave. It's more like a visual thing, but it does make the audio file a lot louder without affecting the sound. So tip number 6 on my list is to use Purge instrument. And this is something you come across in Contact. So if you use any Contact instruments, which are virtual instruments, then you may have come across this already. And this is another way of saving CPU. So again, if you have a low-end computer, this is a lifesaver tip. Okay, so I've got loads of instruments loaded up in Contact, and this is 0.59 gigabyte. So basically Contact just loads up the whole instrument. So every single sample in that, like every single key in the range of that instrument is being loaded up as a sample. So this violin part is using 64 megabytes. The grand piano is 187 megabytes because it's just loading up every single sample. But in our piece, we're not using every single key. So we can purge the notes that aren't being used, and that'll save memory. So how you do this is you just click on Purge. If you see here it says Purge, click on that, purge all samples. So you can do that for individual instruments, or you can come up to the top here, click on this and go to Global Purge, purge all samples. So when you press play now, it'll just start loading up the samples that are being used. And you'll see a massive difference. So that was a really basic, like, sort of orchestral piece that I'd just written in about 2 seconds. And you can see now the difference. We're only using 20.84 megabytes instead of 0.59 gigabytes. So it does have a massive effect on your computer. If you have a low-end computer, this is something you definitely want to check out. Right then, the next tip on the list is to bounce audio files whenever you finish using them. So if I just press record now on an audio channel and just record something really basic, I'll record one word and then I'll stop it, record the next word, stop it, record the next word, and so on. And that'll just create a little example. So here we go. My name is Liam. So as you can see, if I open up the pool, these 4 things, I'll just open up the Explorer file. So it's 10, 11, 12, 13. So these 4 files are 976 kilobytes. This is just an example, by the way. And if you highlight them all and then go to audio, click bounce selection, replace, that'll create a new file. So audio 110, audio 1. Open up the pool window again. And now if I right click on here, anywhere, and go remove unused media, go trash, that'll send all the others into the trash, and we can empty the trash now. So click empty trash, erase from hard drive. We're just left with that 1 file instead of 4. Let's have a look at that in the Explorer. I believe it is this one. That one is automatically created when you make a project. I think it deletes when you close the project. But this one is slightly less than the original. So that's a way of saving space. It's also a way of cleaning up your project as well. Instead of having loads of audio files, you can just bounce them all into one audio. So tip number 8 on this list is use audio alignment with audio tracks. And again, I've recorded a really simple vocal phrase. My name is Liam. Just me saying my name is Liam. And I've just repeated this over and over again. So there's 5 different takes of me saying my name is Liam. I've tried to get it all in time as best I could. Okay, so if I play these all together, you'll hear it's slightly out of time and it sounds horrible. Let's listen. My name is Liam. It sounds horrific. And what we're going to do is align all of those to make them sound more tight. So what you do is you highlight the first one and you click on this audio alignment panel. I believe this is only in the Pro version of Cubase. Right, so if I now click plus, it's going to add this selected one as the reference. And then if I highlight the other 4 and click on this, it'll add all of those as targets. So whatever this is, it's going to try and push everything in line with that. And we're going to put it as 100%. So let's click Align Audio. And that's now moved everything in time. Let's listen it now. My name is Liam. It just sounds a lot more tighter. So if you have multiple guitar takes on a solo or something, and you're double tracking things, you want to get that really tight sound, use the audio alignment. So I'll zoom in and I'll show you the alignment. So that's how it was before. Things were slightly off. And that's with the alignment. So it really pushed all of these in line. That's before. And that's after. Okay, so tip number 9 is to get the tempo from an audio track. And I've only recently discovered this. This is a lifesaver for me because I do a lot of bass covers. And a lot of the times I'm trying to sync up the tempo track in Cubase to an existing track. And right, I'll show you the problem that you have with that. If I play this track now, and I put the click on. See, my click isn't lined up with the track that I've just imported. So if you want to set your project to have the same tempo as an existing track, like this works with even live instruments and stuff. It's really simple to do. All you do is highlight the audio file, then you go to Project, and you go to Tempo Detection. And that'll open up this panel. And if you just click Analyze, there you go. That's now created a whole new tempo track. So now if I press play and put the click on, that's automatically made my project perfectly in time with that audio file. The way I used to do it in the past was literally hand draw the tempo tracks to match the audio file, and it took forever. Like, that is an absolute lifesaver right there. Okay, so tip number 10 is really just going to be a list of useful user interface things. Like things to get around Cubase a lot quicker and to make your project a lot simpler to use. So the first one is you can actually divide your track list. So if I add a load of MIDI tracks, say, let's add quite a lot so you can see the whole effect. So this window scrolls now is one big thing. If I click this little icon here, divide track list, that creates a second track list. And if I now right click on here and click MIDI tracks, and I'll add, say, 5 there or 6 there. So now we've got a second track list window. If I scroll on this one, it'll scroll that one. And this one is scrollable as well if you have enough tracks. So how is this useful, you're asking? Well, the way I use it is to put things on like rulers. So if I add a ruler and then I put that to seconds, and then you can also put things like marker tracks on here as well. And then that will always stay at the top of your Cubase project. Okay, the next useful user interface thing on the list is you can hide certain channels from the project list. So I've got all these MIDI channels out here. If I just create, say, I don't know, an audio track. So there's the one audio track. Now say I want to work on just audio and I want to get rid of all the MIDI tracks so it's easier to use. I'll just click on this little icon here, this yellow thing. Then you can select which channels you see in this project. So I'm going to deselect everything except for audio tracks. And this doesn't delete the channels, it just hides them from view. So if you need to work on the MIDI channels later on, you can just click here and they're all back again. The next thing on the list is you can color tracks. Like, most people know this one already, but if you're brand new to Cubase, then this one's for you. Like, everything at the moment looks exactly the same. Like, say I have loads of like MIDI here. In fact, let's add a load of MIDI. One sec. Okay, so we've got loads of channels here with, say this is all your parts that you're working on. It all looks exactly the same. Okay, so if you just select all the channels that you want to change the color of by holding Control and clicking on them, and then go to this button at the top, select color for selected tracks or events, and then click the color that you want. That'll change the color, and they stand out so much more clearer now. So you can add a few colors there. Like, that's a lot easier to see. And the way I use it is, if I'm working with orchestra stuff, I'll colour certain instruments certain colours. So strings I'll always colour red, percussion I'll always colour yellow, and it just makes it a lot more easier to see. Another thing to make things easier is to store everything in folders, and you can do this by selecting a number of channels and then right clicking and going move selected tracks to folder, and that will create a folder that you can close. So it's another way to keep things a lot more organized. So let's say I'll put all these red ones into a folder. There we go. And then everything else I'll put into another folder. So now if I want the red ones, I know they're all there. And the final tip for this whole video is just basically how to move around Cubase. Like, I find going down here and like scrolling like this, like say you're opening up a MIDI part, you've got to come down here, you've got to find this little bar, you've got to scroll it, and you're doing that constantly. And say you want to zoom in as well, you've got to go to these little tiny buttons, zoom in, and it's just, it doesn't work. So the way I do it is, if you want to move around, then you hold shift and you scroll the mouse wheel. So if you scroll it upwards, you move to the right. If you scroll it down, you move to the left. So I use this all the time. Like, it even works in any of the windows that you open up. So you can see, move around like that, instead of trying to find that little tiny scroll bar. And the other one is, if you hold Control and move the mouse wheel, it zooms in and out. So if I want to zoom in there, I just hold Control and move the mouse wheel up, and it also zooms in on wherever your mouse is. So say I wanted to zoom in right on this point here, I can just hold the mouse over it and zoom in. Say I wanted to zoom in here, hold the mouse over it, and it'll zoom in there. So there's my top 10 tips for Cubase. If this has helped in any way, then hit that like button, and if you're new here, then click that subscribe button as well. It always helps. And if you have any tips of your own, don't forget to leave them in the comments below. Also, I've just released an album, Lo-Fi Beats for Studying. Give it a listen on Spotify and on Pandora Radio and on Amazon Music. And also here on YouTube as well. I'm putting up the songs on YouTube. So give it a listen. If it's your type of thing, then add it to playlists and things like that. Anyway, I've been Liam. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Where's that off button?